Makes you wonder how Colony did any teaching at all.
Well, they took all their stuff out.
Oh, okay.
So like, you know,
I didn't
our
realize it was
philosophy
their
is that
stuff.
we buy stuff that is connected to the building. But how that school was set up, South Colony brought in all their equipment.
We don't know how good we had it, right?
Yeah,
Well, you did, and we didn't have to pay for it. Now we're gonna, not only we had to buy all the equipment, but we're gonna have to pay for the teachers.
Mhm.
All right, Mr. President, it is 9:30. We have quorum.
We're all set to roll out. Okay. This morning's Capital District Youth Center meeting, 9:30 a.m. Wednesday, August 16th, 2024. And the meeting is streamed on the Capital District Planning YouTube channel. And on our agenda is roll call. Albany County, William Connors.
Here.
Kristen.
Here.
Rensselaer County, Laura.
Here.
Stammel.
Here.
Saratoga County, Susan.
Here.
Warner, here. Schenectady County, Gary Hughes, not here. Samantha Miller, not here too. Okay, and our intro to guest is,
We don't have any guests
we
today.
have no guest. Online is anybody or?
Nope, nobody online. We're just
Nobody
streaming to
online.
record it and make sure it's
Thank you much.
available.
I want to thank everybody for showing up for this special meeting. We have a quorum, so we're gonna proceed. The approval of the June 12th meeting minutes. You all have a copy of them? Make a motion to move. Thank you, Mike. Do I hear a second?
Second.
Thank you, Laura. Yeas?
Aye.
Thank you. Approved. Financial statements through July 31st, 2024.
Right, so
Memo 2417. Mark?
So you see the anticipated expenses, you know, we're tracking significantly under budget through 8 months of the year. That's because the budget that we adopted is a ramp-up budget that anticipates having the staff on to operate at 39 beds, which is why we're tracking so much under budget on the expenses. But the main reason I wanted to take a look at the financials before the next action is to see how much we have in our savings account. And that's on the balance sheet. It's the second number down. It's $417,000. And then we also have about 24,000 in another money market account. So all told, we have a pretty good padding to be able to float the money that we'll contemplate in the next action and other related actions. Any questions?
Do I hear it first?
Like that.
Laura, thank you. I hear a second.
Second.
Thank you. Yeas?
Aye.
Thank you. That passes. I forgot to ask anybody if they had any questions, but. Sorry. You'll give me a pass. Okay, the next item is authorizing expenses for the classroom improvements, memo 2418.
Right, so as the memo notes, our plan A was originally to roll these costs into the overall facility improvement project. These costs, appropriately so, were flagged as not being in the original scope or specifications of the improvement project because we did not anticipate needing to get a new operator to run the school in the facility. When South Colony left, they took their equipment with them, and so we need to fit out new equipment to be able to operate the school for BOCES. So BOCES and Together for Youth have been working closely with the existing contractors that are on the ground to figure out what needs to be done. I've attached the quote for a portion of the IT work. There will also be another portion of work related to running wires from the IT closets to the classroom spaces, which is out of the skill set of the contractor that sets up the actual technology. So that would fall on our electrician, which is DLC, but we're still awaiting a quote for them. In terms of a process, so that we don't get any static about not procuring vendors appropriately, we just want to make sure that we're doing things above board. So after a conversation with the dormitory authority, we agreed that they would issue CDYCI a new project services agreement because they have these two vendors already procured for the project. They would be able to easily justify a single source for both contractors because they're on the site already doing related work. So they would have no problem doing that. The project services agreement between CDYCI and the dormitory authority would include this work, the two contractors working on this, and may include other stuff, but we don't know yet. But we're going to write it so that it can be amended in the future, subject to additional approvals from the executive committee if anything else like this comes up that falls outside of the scope of the project. In terms of reimbursement, there's still no clear pathway to get these costs reimbursed. The two main avenues are through the operations budget, so we would get reimbursed through the rates that we charge, or the counties could claim something similar to how they're claiming reimbursement for the debt service payments. But the pathway, we're still working on the pathway with OCFS and what's going to work the best for that. But suffice to say, they're on board with getting the counties reimbursed. It's just the details of how that reimbursement would take place. So I tried to craft a board action that would provide some guardrails for this decision. So it's not just open-ended spending authority, but that would give us some flexibility in case anything happens like this in the future for us to be able to make decisions a little bit quicker. So my proposed board action would be to approve funding for the work outlined in the attached quote, authorize the executive committee, and the executive committee are the officers of the corporation, so president, vice president, secretary, and treasurer, to approve funding for any additional work needed. And then I put a not exceeding value in there. It's always good to have a not to exceed when you're talking about a financial approval. And authorize the chief administrator to execute additional project services agreements with the dormitory authority as needed, subject to the executive committee's funding approvals. So that would authorize the spending for these projects, authorize me to execute new project services agreements with DASNY. Any additional amendments to those project services agreements, if they require funding approval for those changes would then go to the executive committee for approval. And I wouldn't be able to execute the project services agreement without that approval.
Gotcha. So this is not exceeding the $300,000, right?
Yes,
Yes, it's not, or yes, it is.
it's not, it's a not to exceed $300,000.
Yeah. A question, originally on, I remember we went through some of this stuff and I thought a lot of the IT equipment was part of the process. Not just construction, but the purchase of the equipment.
Mhm.
Where did that go wrong?
So the IT equipment is part of the project. So, and a lot of the new spaces and the existing spaces are going to be fitted out with all new Wi-Fi, and the new dormitory authority has all that stuff. And there was new cabling scheduled for the classroom spaces as well. But that design and the specifications for that wiring was predicated on South Colony continuing to operate. So they already had fitted out to their specifications and their needs. The only thing that we were doing at that time was pulling wires to the new locations, essentially to provide a fiber optic service to the classrooms. And I think they were anticipating 1 or 2 drops into each classroom. And a drop is when I'm not familiar with the nomenclature, but where you can connect into the network, So BOCES and Together for Youth, got together to talk about what BOCES needs would be to operate the classrooms, with the technology that they would need to operate the vocational training programs. And once they determined that, they identified a specification working with the existing IT vendor who's working on the overall project. And through that project, they identified some additional needs for technology, some additional drops that would be needed in the classroom space. And that really is driving the change, not the change, but having the new education provider in the facility and what their needs are is driving this particular element of the project.
We knew though, over a year and a half ago, that Colony was dropping out and that, that we were gonna need and add to and replace whatever we needed in order to do that, to make the facility, the training, applicable and things of that nature. But, why did it take until now for us to find out what it was gonna cost us? Did it take them that long to?
Well, as you recall, we just authorized an agreement with BOCES at our June meeting. So work really didn't start in earnest to coordinate with our operator Together for Youth and BOCES. It didn't start until June to talk about the details. So that was our starting point to determine what their needs would be. We were really working up until that point to get a contract in place to have BOCES operate the school system. So the timeline has been between June and now.
Well, then either we took too long to get BOCES on board, or else we didn't take somebody didn't take the initiative to find out early enough what we really needed. Therefore, this is causing this. I'm just concerned about us being perceived as somebody not being prepared or not being prepared in advance in order to make sure we stayed on budget rather than to, work with funds that we had already at hand. So-
Well, this, again, in our construction manager and legitimately, these expenses would have fallen on CDYCI regardless of whether we were doing a construction project. So just if we were not doing a construction project, South Colony left, CDYCI would still be on the hook for these expenses to fit out the classrooms, the specifications of the provider. The contract that BOCES says that, we buy the equipment for them to run the school.
Yeah.
So regardless of the construction project, we would have had to spend this money anyway. Again, our plan A was to roll this in to the overall construction budget. But the construction budget contingencies are rapidly evaporating, so to be conservative with the construction budget, the plan B is to bring it to this table because we would have been on the hook to spend this money anyway, essentially.
And that relates back to the construction budget itself. I mean, it seems like we went far away because there was plenty of money in there in the contingency budget. We thought we made to do just in case of emergency. Seems like a lot of emergencies come up at the last minute.
Yeah, I mean, we padded the contingency budgets.
Yeah.
I think the contingency budgets were 15%.
Yeah.
I mean, typically it was 10%. But given the COVID challenges for materials and labor challenges, we wanted to pad it. There have been a number of things that have happened during the construction phase, construction project that have, really driven many thousands of dollars in changes. And these are life safety things that either were missed in the design phase, were missed when the specifications for the projects were approved by the agencies and by, everyone who needs to approve them. And then things that came up that resulted from requirements that were handed down by the regulatory agencies while we were doing the construction project. So these things could include, once they see something installed, they're like, well, we didn't think it was going to look that way, or these doors shouldn't operate that way, or this camera system should So all those little things, maybe $1,000 here, $1,500 there, $2,000 there. They all add up. We're really trying, and our construction manager is doing a great job of, one, value engineering, and two, focusing on needs versus wants. And these are health safety things or things that the regulatory agencies are saying we need.
Okay.
Just a couple examples is the fire safety system. So it was identified that it was missed in the design phase, that the fire safety system in the new building is not up to the current code standard. When you make significant renovations to a building like this, you're required to bring the fire safety system up to the current code. That was something that was not contemplated in the original project. So the code officer for Albany County identified that. And those who were in the room when I was on the call, you heard the conversation about how they're trying to save money on that piece of the project. Another part of the project that was an unfortunate mistake is that the anti-climb fence that was specified for the rec yard. Once it was installed, it was clear to everyone that the last 4 feet of the fence were in fact not anti-climb at all. You could clearly climb that fence. So that resulted in a change order to install concertina wire on the top of the rec yard fence, but the regulatory agencies want us to come back at the end of the project, take down the concertina fence and reinstall anti-climb fence. So that one mistake alone is about $80,000 to $100,000. But there have been a number of examples of those projects, but mainly it's relatively small items that just add up, but they're life safety or they're things that are requested by the regulatory agencies.
I understand. I just the one that I know offhand, any engineer making the design should know that they have to bring in any building, whether it's a rehab or not, up to code. And
Mhm.
fire safety code is, that should have been flagged. It went up right away. It is too bad it was overlooked. And
Mhm.
I don't know how an individual could do that. The other thing I had was just a quick question about the counties getting the path to reimbursement again there. But is that something that we're going to come up with a path to provide them, or is the counties gonna have to look for this themselves?
So I'm gonna work directly with OCFS to determine what the pathway is, and then we'll let the counties know.
Okay.
So my sense is that OCFS will want to include this as a claimable expense in the system that the counties use to claim the bed day reimbursement. It's called JDAS. So there's a budget approved in the JDAS system. Like, for example, we issue our rates at the end of a quarter. The total amount that a county owes or can claim in the system based on the bed days of use is put in the JDAS system. And then when the counties seek reimbursement for that, they charge against that budget for the quarter. So this would be, a separate allocation that the counties could claim against that would be approved in the JDAS system. There are other pathways. I don't think OCFS is enthusiastic about them. So how the counties get reimbursed for the debt service is that Albany County is primarily running and getting the debt service reimbursement at 89%. They file a claim twice a year once they make the debt service payments, and then they get 89% reimbursement. Then we bill out the other 3 counties their share of the 11% that's left over. And then we get the money and then we send that to Albany County to make them whole on their debt service payments. But that's related to debt service, and that's fixed on the amortization schedule. And I think OCFS is going to be more comfortable with something that the counties can claim against for this particular expense. And whether or not they want to use CDYCI as the pay agent to get payment from the counties, and then, we don't know the details, but that's essentially what the conversation is going to look like.
Yeah, I'm sure they'll want it any way they can get it, just getting it. That's all.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And I just wanted to make sure that there's gonna attempt to be a pathway, and then when that pathway comes, we will be the ones to notify them that this is what we believe is the best pathway to move forward.
Right. So until that pathway is identified, I'm not going to send any bills to the counties.
Okay.
So the 4-county agreement specifies a cost share for these types of expenses among the counties. So off the top of my head, I think it's 60% for Albany County, 8% for Saratoga, and 16% for the other 2 counties. And that would be the allocations on the bill. But, I'm not gonna send bills until we know what the pathway for reimbursement is going to be.
That's all I have. Thank you.
Mhm.
Any other questions? Hearing none, can I hear first? To approve, Laura, thank you. You have a second?
Second.
Second, thank you. Is there any other questions? Hearing none, do I have a yeas?
Aye.
Any nays? Hearing none, it passes.
Great, thank you all.
Thank you. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Is there any other business we have to address at this time?
He is that post 16.
October 16th is our next meeting. Hopefully we get a quorum again, and I hope you all have a lovely, it's coming to a fast end, so, do I have a first to adjourn?
I'll make that.
Laura, thank you. Have a second.
Second.
Any questions? Hearing none? We'll see you then. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you.
And I want to thank everybody.
Thank you.